Let's pick some garlic. So the big question of this video, how do we know when our garlic is ready to pick? And there's basically two main things that we're looking for. One is the plant itself, and the other one is the weather. So let's take a look at the plants first. I'm a little late with my harvest this year, but we can use this one here as an example. Ideally, 40% of your garlic plant should be brown, and then the top part should have some green left. Usually with hardneck garlic, that means when the bottom three leaves turn brown and you have a little bit of yellowing on top, but still some green, this is a good time to pull your garlic. Some of these ones that have turned mostly brown are still fine, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. The weather and the amount of water in your soil may also dictate when you might want to pull your garlic. You should stop watering your garlic about a week before you want to harvest, and if there's any rain coming up in your future forecast, you may want to consider pulling it sooner than later. The reason for this is any more additional water might make it harder for you to cure your garlic, thus decreasing the success rate you'll have with storage. You may end up with more garlic being diseased or rotten. We just had a pretty heavy rain maybe 2 days ago, but I don't have enough time to wait a little longer because we have more rain expected in the forecast, so I'm going to pull these now. When you're pulling your garlic, the official way would be to dig around the bulb a little bit. Me personally, I kind of just grab it at the base and gently pull upward. This is kind of a do as I say, not as I do type situation, but you want to be sort of gentle with your garlic because they're not fully cured yet. With our soft neck garlic, you can see that some of these stems had flopped over, but this is totally normal because unlike the hard neck garlic, the soft neck garlic doesn't have that center stem to give them the support to stand straight up. So here you can see why they say to dig around the bulb before pulling it up. I went to pull this one up and it broke right off the top, and I still have the bulb of garlic down in the dirt here. So maybe for your soft neck garlic, you'll want to consider actually digging around, whereas the hard neck garlic is a little more rigid, so it's a little bit easier to just pull from the stem. Okay, I brought everything inside, and I can show you here why it's important to let the soil dry out, or at least try to, before harvesting garlic. So you can see with this one, a lot of the wet dirt sort of clung to the bulb itself. If the soil was drier, it wouldn't have done that as much. It maybe would have looked like this one. But it's important to try to avoid to brush the dirt off of the cloves, because if you do, you risk damaging the protective skins around your cloves of garlic because they're not fully cured yet. Now we can also talk about what happens when we let a bulb of garlic over ripen. So you can see this one here. The cloves have separated from the bulb and there's not really much of a papery skin covering them anymore. It's still fine to use, but the main problem with letting garlic over ripen is the more you let it over ripen, the less viable it is for storage, so it won't last nearly as long as one that's maybe a better amount of ripeness. You can see this one here. All of the cloves are still attached into one bulb and it still has a good covering of this outer papery skin. Some of these overripe ones and smaller ones aren't really worth going through the curing process, so you can actually just use these right away just by washing all the dirt off under some water and then just using them however you would. For curing them, you can leave them lay out like this for a week or two and then trim the roots to maybe about 1/4 inch and maybe cut it so there's a inch or two a stem above the bulb, and then move them to a container storage like a paper bag or a crate or something. But what we're going to do is group these up into bunches of 5, tie them with a string, and then hang them from a rope in a dry, dark place. After they're cured, you can brush the rest of the dirt off them because by this point the skins will be hard enough. I'm using my tying twine for this part, but any kind of string will work, and I have my group of 5 here, and I'm just going to run this underneath the whole bunch and tie a knot. And I'm going to do this for the rest of the bulbs. So I have everything hung up on a line in my basement, and me personally, I leave it like this, so I use this both as my curing and storage setup. In about 2 weeks, maybe I will brush off some of the dirt and trim the roots down, but otherwise I'll just leave them hanging like this. Since we had that rain that I talked about earlier, I'm gonna put down an oscillating fan to shoot some air at these just so that it helps with drying a little bit since they might be a little wet. And if everything goes well, you can also use some of these same bulbs to replant your harvest for next year. So I just want to thank you for coming along with me on this garlic growing journey, and I hope if you were following along, everything went well for you. But if you weren't following along, I hope that I gave you enough information so that you can try it for yourself next season. With that being said, thanks for watching, and as always, happy growing.